All right, propellers. I put this picture up there just because it's an awesome looking picture. All right, I want to start propellers with a quote from Orville Wright, famous bicycle guy. And Orville said this about propellers. It was apparent that a propeller was simply an aeroplane traveling in a spiral course. As we could calculate the effect of an airplane traveling in a straight course, why should we not be able to calculate the effect of one traveling in a spiral course? At first glance, this does not appear difficult, but on further consideration, it's hard to even find a point from which to make a start. So what he's saying, it's just a wing going in a circle. And he's right. But he said, at first glance, it does not appear difficult, but on further consideration, hard to even find a point at which to make a start. The thrust depends upon the speed and the angle at which the blade strikes the air. The angle at which the blade strikes the air depends upon the speed at which the propeller is turning, the speed the machine is traveling forward, and the speed at which air is slipping backwards. Any one of these changes, it changes the rest, as they are all interdependent upon one another. So, although propellers look very basic and it's just a spinning wing, it is anything but when you have to figure it out. But we can bring it all the way back to the fact that it's really just a spinning wing, and it's not anything too crazy. Yeah, too crazy. So we'll take a look at that. But at some point you're like, hey, that seems rather complicated. Now you're right. Oh, if you're thinking, well, it seems so simple to begin with, so did Orville. All right, so we are going to start with talking about parts of a blade. And this week we're going to talk mostly about the types of propellers and stick with fixed pitch, and then we'll move on into adjustable, and then we'll get into constant speed props. So nomenclature, well, what are we doing? Props, which is short for propellers, if you want to know. All right, nomenclature. Nomenclature of the fixed pitch is what I'm talking about. Fixed pitch, although some of this applies to no matter what it is. So, all right, let's start with pictures, because pictures are helpful. There we go. We're going to pull all this stuff so I can either write it. It'd be easier to just look at this and you can write it down. So we had one, nomenclature. A, the blade. Well, this is the blade right here. So this has two blades, really. Even though it's a fixed pitch prop, it has two blades. Sometimes you'll even find a number stamped right about here, that'll tell you like 1 or 2, so you can always reference which blade you're talking about, because if you had a little something over on this blade, you can't say the right-hand blade, because after a little while it's going to be the left-hand blade, or can't call it the top because it's going to be the bottom. So 1 is the blade. 2 is the neck. That is this area right in here, as indicated by the picture. This is the easiest job I ever had. I just tell you what's on the picture. The hub. On a fixed pitch prop, this is the hub. On a constant speed or ground adjustable, the hub is something that you can actually separate from the blades. So the blades can actually be interchanged. You can take off a blade, install a blade, rebuild the hub, change the hub, keep the old blades, so it's rechangeable. So there's our hub. We have the hub bore. The hub bore is on a fixed pitch prop. I guess it's just a thing. On a metal prop, it's the size of the bore of the crankshaft, so that it fits over the pilot of the crankshaft. Wood props, we have to be concerned with that bore getting wore out. You don't really have a bore per se like that on constant speeds or the other ones. It's more of an attach point. We have the bolt holes. Thing about props, I'll get into some of the numbers. I want to say that stress in this area right here is something in the neighborhood of like 20 tons in an operating blade. They want to rip themselves to pieces. They are so deadly under tremendous amount of stress. I don't know if I have respect or just raw fear of propellers. Probably just pure fear is what it is. And there have been problems with cracks in this area. And when you get a crack in this area and any part of the blade separates, even if you were to lose this, an inch of the tip on one of these blades, that is a catastrophic event for the aircraft. It will shake the airplane so violently that it could rip the engine right out of the front. And then because of the way the aircraft is balanced, when the engine falls off, the airplane backs up all the way to the ground. there is no recovery from that. Guess unless you had a serious pull the chute. All right, so we have the bolt holes, a critical area. Yeah, we'll get more to that. The blade tip. I have the tips out here. This is, I was going to say, it's called tipping. I don't know if it says that. It does say tipping on there. Thank you, words. So this is a wood propeller down here on the bottom. This is a metal one, aluminum up here. So these wood ones have this metal tipping all the way down. It's like brass or bronze. And it's to protect the tip from rock dings and stuff like that. It's not very kind to wood props. Funny story. Why are propeller tips painted a bright color?
So birds can see them?
So birds can see them? Birds are colorblind, aren't they?
I don't know. That's pretty quick. I like that.
No. So what? Humans can see them.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what people say. But remember the old, I don't know if you heard this, when Henry Ford made Model Ts, he said you can have it any color as long as it's black. And why did it have to be black?
Paint dry faster.
Paint dried faster. And so you have to consider that airplanes were around when the Model T. And so what happened is, although the paint dried faster, they found that black paint did not have as much cohesion as the brightly colored paints because of the way the pigment worked in it. So when the prop was painted purely black all the way across like that, because of the centrifugal force of the prop spinning, that black paint tended to slide off. And so what you'd have to do maintenance-wise is it slid, you'd have to actually like trim the paint that slid this way, and you'd be missing paint up here in the hub. And so you have to paint the hub black where the paint had slid off. So what they found is that if they painted it a brighter color here at the tip, it had a better cohesion, and it stopped the black paint from sliding off the edge. And well, now that technology has been what it is, they just kept the bright color tips because they found that, it's the way we've done things. So,
Interesting.
yeah. Every part of that story was complete crap. So
Really?
the paint sliding off, come on. Paint slid off and you had to repaint the hub. Oh, you guys are gullible.
Hey. 5 times. You don't know what's true anymore. Yeah. Left is right and right is left.
Nah, it's painted white so you don't walk into it. Yeah, and then what happens if you walk into Propeller?
Say goodbye. You don't have to worry about retirement.
Well, let's go to service bulletins. Now you got a prop strike. So you got to do a whole prop strike inspection.
Well, you won't be doing it. But.
You won't, yeah. But all right. Obviously, the leading edge is the part that's going forward. The more blunt part, and the trailing edge is the sharper part. Let's see, metal tipping to prevent from rock chips, and the trailing edge, I just mentioned that. Are you writing this stuff down?
What's up with the fabric covering on?
So the wood.
Oh, yeah, fabric covering. Okay. It gives stability to the tips out here on the wood props. We actually have a little video to watch. It's kind of cool. They talk about that fabric that goes on there, but it gives it some stability out there and a little protection. The back of the propeller is what you are looking at right there. So the front is the back, and the back is the face. So you write this down. Back of blade. That would be point number I, because it was A, blade, B, neck, C, hub, D, board. Bolt holes, blade tip, leading edge, trailing edge, back of blade, also called the cambered side. So we got A through H, you wrote that. I, back of blade, That is the cambered side. That is the bulgy part. Let's put something, well, this will make more sense. So then we have the face of blade. That is the flat side. Or the side that faces the pilot. Assuming it's a standard tractor type configuration with the engine out in front of you. That's the part that faces the pilot. All right, the blade cord. If you don't get this, Phil's going to come in here and start dumping some melons. What is define the cord?
It's the line.
It's the line you draw, so
Line you draw.
That's in between.
The imaginary line, it's a real line if you ask me, not to imagine it, that goes from the trailing edge or leading edge to the trailing edge. There we go. So the line.
The line you draw.
The line between the leading edge to trailing edge, LE to TE. And blade station. You guys had aerodynamics, right?
Yes.
You're-
sure.
You're here for that. Blade station. What do you think that is? A station number. A distance
From the hub.
in inches from the center of the hub. Center of the hub.
To the blade tip?
To wherever.
Okay.
Like, so if I said blade station 5, then it's 5 inches from the center out.
Oh, okay.
All right. 2. Theory. I fear I may have gotten a little wordy in my notes here. And by fear, I mean I know that I am. And I really should try and make this easier. So let's see if I can. Why, now I can't. I can't make it worse. By the way, I just threw this slide in here because I didn't mention it. There's all these jokes going around about, prop strike. These are called Hartzell Q-tip props because it says it right there. Q-tips, Q for quiet. So modern aircraft with winglets, what's a winglet do?
Fuel economy?
What's it for? On wings.
To prevent the turbulence from spinning.
the wing chip for
Well, yeah. So it keeps the low pressure air from spilling over to the high pressure, or vice versa, high to low, from spilling over. And so in effect, it's like adding a longer wing, a wider wing, and it's a more efficient wing. Well, they did the same thing with these props. They put a little winglet on it. I haven't seen one in a while. I don't know if they still make them, but they are out there.
So don't try to bend it.
And so don't try and bend it back or straighten it, and don't. Now, sometimes you will see props like this, and there's a bunch of scrapes right here. That's a prop strike. That's different.
There is a difference.
All right. Let's see. We'll do this. Theory. All right. So, and as Orville said, a prop is a rotating wing. Now you guys had, no, you didn't have helicopter aerodynamics.
Nope.
Nope, he pulled that out.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Next year. He said next year.
Yep. It converts horsepower to thrust. And if you look at a blade, which I hope you do someday, you will notice that the prop blades aren't every station. Okay, now we know what a station is. It's measured in inches. If you took a 1-inch slice of the blade from the hub all the way down to the tip, no 1-inch section that you pulled out of there would look the same. So, right, if I took a bandsaw, I cut an inch, an inch, an inch, and I handed it out, you'd be like, every single one of these is different. Well, if you did that with a wing, it, like every 1 foot section, like, well, that's the same as that, and that's the same as that, right? They all look the same, but a propeller does not. There's a reason why that is, and it's called, and it ties in with blade element theory. Blade element theory, which is to say that each section of this blade, a blade, is completely and totally different. So we can look at down here at the 12-inch station, which means what? Center of the hub. As compared to every single one of these, they're different. These are fat. This one's skinny. This one is at a degree angle like this. This one is getting near horizontal, vertical over here, vertical. So every single one is different. Well, there's a reason behind that. Each one of these airfoils in one of these 1-inch sections is doing something different. And we consider a circle, just moving around a circle, things way out here at this 42-inch station and beyond, moving very, very fast. Subsonic, can't get, if we hit sonic speeds, it's going to be really bad for the prop, but they're getting close to supersonic speeds, getting close to transonic. Down here, it's very slow. So up here, well, I'll get more into it, but first of all, we have to consider speed. So speed is very different. The way the air is going to hit is very different. And I'll have a slide in a minute here. It's going to kind of get into the angular way that angle of attack is going to work on this. But anyway, so each blade is made of small airfoils. Each section can be any size, but for simplicity, we'll assume each section is 1 inch is what I did. And this theory states that the many airfoil sections or elements are formed together to create an airfoil blade that can create thrust when rotated around a central plane. Want me to write all that? Blade element theory. Let's see. Each section of the blade is made up of small airfoils. Is made up of small airfoils. In each section can be any size. You can make whatever you want. I'm just talking in inches. Can be any size, but we will say 1 inch sections, just for simplicity. And the theory is, the theory states that the many airfoil sections are formed together to create an airfoil blade that can create thrust when rotated around a central plane. It states that the many airfoils, many is in lots of, not many is in small, but it goes either which way. Airfoil or airfoil sections or elements are formed together to create an airfoil or blade that can create thrust when rotated around a central plane. And each one is different, and they're different because, so each element is designed designed to operate at its best angle of attack What is angle of attack? Chord line against relative wind. So if we want to make it very simple, we can use an airplane instead of a wing because we can look at it easier. And as the airplane is flying forward straight and level flight and the air is coming out this way, the angle of attack is very low. Now if the airplane is doing the exact same speed going this way, which way is the angle of attack?
Pretty high.
Still this way. Like if it's a, a jet, what do I want to say, F-16 or something. I'm being old now. Going straight up, angle of attack is this way. All right, let's go back to say it's like a little 150 or something, right? A prop-driven airplane. And we start going like this, and we go up, we're going forward. We've changed the angle of attack some, right? We have forward momentum, but up. Or if we do an extreme, we go into a stall, right? Really slow flight at a high angle of attack. Angle of attack is coming still at it like this. It's not coming down, and we get a stall happening. So hopefully that makes some sort of sense. It's how the relative wind hits the airfoil. The relative wind is going to be completely dependent upon which way the airplane's going. I can make the angle of attack 0 this way. I can make it 0 that way. I can make it 0 this way if I have enough horsepower. Right? You can make it 0 at any angle. It's when you change the way the airplane is going versus its velocity forward, if that makes sense.
So
That you
that's
start changing it.
So is that to say, no matter what pitch the airplane is at, each segment of the blade works at its best angle of attack?
Well, now we're just talking about a wing right now
Okay.
to make it simple,
Okay.
because they're going to make it very complicated in a second. So you have to understand angle of attack with something very simple like a wing. Going forward, it's about the relative wind.
Got it.
So in a little bit, we're going to twist it and make it go sideways and then look at it different, because it's going to be in multiple planes at the same time, not airplanes at the same time, multiple planes of existence at the same time. Let me see. To operate its best angle of attack. So we got angle of attack, right? It's the way the wind is hitting the chord line. Angle of attack. Where was it? Just angle of attack. Since each section moves at a different speed. What the hell am I writing? Steve, S-P-E-E. Edit that part out. So back to the airplane, it's real simple to say the angle of attack. If I'm, I'll put a little bit of pitch into it and I'm flying along this way. Angle of attack is pretty much like this, right? Because the relative wind is coming at this way. So we've got a bit of an angle going over those wings. Well, the thing about this is the wing from here to here and here, everywhere, the wing is moving at the exact same speed. In a propeller, it is not moving in the same speed. We have it going around in a circle. So out here, this is moving very quickly, and right here, it's not moving so quick because it's a circle, right? Everybody. But if I talk about RPM, see there's difference, speed, RPM. It's the same RPM. If the prop is moving at 500 revolutions per minute, every single part of it is going in that circle 500 times in 1 minute. But out here at the tip, it's moving miles per hour a lot faster than it's moving miles per hour here. So everything's moving at a different speed, same RPM. So each section, each section may have, and it does, a different chord, a different chord, meaning how wide the blade is, a different thickness, and angle. Each one of those things is going to change. Like I said a minute ago, the tips move faster than the hub, or near the hub. And the RPM. The RPM for all sections is the same. Revolutions per minute does not change. Oh, it changes when you move the throttle, obviously, RPM. This gradual change in blade sections or elements is called pitch distribution. And that is the noticeable twist in the prop. Or blade. So, talking about nomenclature, I guess I need to warn you right now. Props is one of those things where words are used improperly all of the time. I'm very guilty of it myself, where we use pitch and angle in the wrong sense. I'll say prop when I really should be talking about a blade, because a prop is like the whole thing, and a blade is, a blade is a blade. So I'll try not to, but if I confuse you, just go, hey, wait a minute, you mean specifically? I'll straighten it out. But I'm not going to really correct you on it either, since I'm just as guilty, and so since I'm throwing it out there, that's the way it's going to work. Let's review thrust. Thrust. I got this right out of your Q&As, so there's my quote on that. And I wrote according to, maybe because I don't think I loved it. So, all right, thrust is produced by a rotating prop. So thrust is produced by a rotating prop. I'm just going to say prop because you get the idea. It's rotating in the same way, lift is produced by a wing. How is lift produced in a wing?
When the air goes over the wing, it creates a faster, lighter air, and when it goes under, it's
Low pressure,
higher pressure.
Higher pressure. Higher pressure on the bottom. Is that it?
Help me out here.
right? Kind of reactive force on the
So, fun fact here for you. When I was out of A&P school and I was learning to fly, and this guy, that's some really cool customers. He brought me this book by Wolfgang. What the heck's the guy's name? You know what I'm talking about? Longenstein or something like that. Called Stick and Rudder.
Oh,
Yeah, well, anyway, so I'm reading this book called Stick and Rudder. This German guy, he's going off about Newton's third law. Never talked about that in A&P school. So, come to work, I'm talking to, a guy who was a Navy trained pilot. I'm like, hey, this guy, is talking about, Newton's third law is all part flight. The hell did you get that from? Well, it's right here in this book. Oh, throw that book out. Burn it. It's nobody's talking, My point is, when I went to A&P school, and up until not that long ago, there was no Newton's third law. It was Bernoulli's principle. The end, next chapter. And then they added in Newton's third law into all of this, which makes a lot of sense, actually, when you really think about it. When they get into aerodynamics, they talk about Reynolds numbers and stuff. Like, what is this, like tinfoil? And it's all based upon the aerodynamic tendencies of a flat plate of steel, or just flat plate, I should say, not steel. And it goes off. So that to say you could actually fly with a piece of flat plate of aluminum. It doesn't need, just angle it enough, it'll deflect the wind and go. So there's your Newton's third law. So thought that was very interesting. And then I read something the other day, and they're adding another element to this, and I can't remember what it was because I just read it like 2 days ago. I thought, oh, that's interesting, but they didn't expand on it. I'll find out. Anyway, so moving on from this, or continuing, I should say, thrust is produced by a prop in the same way lift is produced by a wing, and this goes on to say an area of decreased pressure is produced immediately in front of the propeller. Which is to say, according to the Q&As, that the propeller simply is sucked into the low pressure in front of it. Just throwing it out there. So it is aerodynamic forces cause the prop to move into this low pressure area. That's, I'm gonna put this according to the Q&A test question answer and whatever. Take that for what it's worth. It's a test question, FAA. 2, some textbooks, and I like some textbooks, add Newton's third law What's Newton's third law?
For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Is that what it is? What's the one that's if something can go wrong, will go wrong? I got him. I got him confused. That makes more sense now. It's Murphy's law. I've asked you before. You know what Murphy did for a living? He literally was an aircraft mechanic.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it's not a joke. The prop thing, the paint, that was it. Now you won't believe anything I say. He really was.
Sure. Sure he was.
Yeah. And he was right. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The two are directed along the same straight line. So what do we have? Action 1. Action 1 with a prop. Acceleration of a mass of air by the blade or by the prop, toward rear of aircraft. Action 2. This is your equal and opposite. Oh, I had a note in here. Assume 200 pounds of accelerated air mass. Whoosh. So if I push 200 pounds of air mass behind me, then I'm going to go forward by 200 pounds forward. So action 2 is the plane is pulled forward. By same but opposite force amount. There, we'll get go with that. Are you with me so far? So it's a rotating wing. You just take the same theory that we had as a wing before. We don't really talk so much about the high pressure on one side and the low pressure on the other. Talking more about the mass of air moving behind you, equal and opposite reaction going forward with that. Yeah, that'll work for me. All right, let's talk about blade angles. Blade angle. Let me see what I got here. All right, blade angle. Some of these drawings or illustrations can be a little tricky. The thing you have to realize is like this is a four-bladed prop you're looking at, and so here's a propeller right there. And so since we're not used to working with four-bladed props, it can get kind of confusing. You're looking at this prop and you focus on this blade trying to figure out what this is doing right here. They're not talking about this blade going straight up and straight down at all. Strictly talking about this blade right there that you can see the line going through. That is the blade angle. Blade angle being if it was going straight up and down versus like this. So you're taking the difference of that angle right there. So if it was straight up, this blade right here was rotated, so it's going straight up and down, we'd say it has a 0 blade angle. So now we're going to move it out some and call that a different angle. All right, blade angle. Blade angle. This is one of those words where we use it incorrectly sometimes. Definition. Definition. The angle between the chord, often the face, but not always. And I say often the face because when you look at a propeller and the front side, which is the back, I'm the pilot, and the face, which is flat, so it's kind of shaped like that. The face, which is the part you see as the pilot, which we think of as the back, but it's not because the back is the front. Everybody with me on that one?
Mhm.
So the face, go ahead.
Or if they're right behind you.
It's the same thing.
It's still
So it's a pusher prop. You got to turn around and look at it. You're going to look at the face. And so the part you see is going to be flat. The part that way is going to be not so much. Yeah.
So face is just always the one that faces towards the center of the plane, not necessarily the one that faces the back of the plane.
Sure. I think you're right about that.
faces the pilot.
Faces the pilot. But the pilot may have to turn around and look at it. Or it's facing the pilot's back of the head, but it's facing the pilot nevertheless. So, all right, but the face of the prop, the flat part, is often in line with the chord. In fact, if you look at it, because it's so flat, it's going to the trailing edge is at it, and it's just close enough to the leading edge too that you can use that as the angle, but not always. But it makes a good place to go. Let's see, angle between the chord of a particular blade section. Because they're all different. The angles go different from the hub all the way to the tip. So the definition angle between the chord of a particular blade station and the plane of rotation. And plane of rotation. Or we could say chord to plane of rotation. Now, at some point, we're going to define exactly where we're always going to take it for reference, but for right now, we just say any section that we're choosing. All right, so let's take a break now.
Like that.
Yeah, I just said that.